I'm Patrick Finley. I'm an artist, photographer, and computer visual effects professional. I'd like to share with you some various skills and tips on creating fun and beautiful art. Welcome to Finley Studio. I'm Patrick Finley, and welcome to Finley Studio. Today we're going to draw a realistic eye in black and white. I'm going to show you a trick to help you lay out a more realistic drawing based off of a photograph. It's called the grid method, and it allows you to quickly create a more realistic and accurate drawings. Before we get started, let's take a look at the tools we'll use today. The paper I'm going to use today is this Strathmore heavyweight drawing paper. I like to draw pretty big, so I'm going with an 18 by 24 inch, and this is a 100-pound premium paper. It's really nice to draw on. Although you don't need this kind of paper to create great artwork. If what you have available to you is a sheet of 8.5 by 11 printer paper, use it. So I'm going to start off my drawing with these Faber-Castell pencils. Maybe a 2B or 4B. This is going to be used very lightly to sort of lay down the grid work and some foundational drawing. The next thing I'll be using are these Derwent charcoal pencils. What I love about these is that they can go super dark. And this kit in particular is nice because it has multiple mediums and multiple dark pencils. You can see how much I like the dark pencil here, as this one's already sort of filed down. And then to erase, I'm going to be using this eraser and this kneaded eraser. The kneaded eraser is always a great tool. The Prismacolor Art Gum erasers are fantastic erasers. One thing to note though is that they do tend to leave behind some residue. To sharpen my pencils, I'm going to be using this Prismacolor pencil sharpener. And then one thing new that I picked up was this Tombow eraser. And it is an extra fine point eraser that's great for pulling out details. And I'm also going to be using with the charcoal pencils, because they're a little bit softer, I picked up this bag of blending stumps. And so I'll be using these to blend the charcoal down. And then lastly, this is another new item that I've not used before. This is a jelly roll pen, and it's kind of like a fine point paint marker. And so I'll be using this to pull out some highlights. And that's about it for the supplies. One thing I forgot to mention is that I will also be using a ruler to help lay out my grid pattern. Here's the photograph of the eye that I'll be using as reference. I will be sure to link this below so that you can download it. Here's how the grid method works. You start by drawing a grid on top of your photograph. The image is 8 inches by 6 inches, so I'll be drawing a grid line every 2 inches. Then, on your paper, you very lightly draw the same 2-inch grid lines. Once that's done, you start to draw the shapes in each box by looking at where the shapes intersect the grid. You move from box to box, creating the shape in each one. When you're done, you will have a drawn copy of your photograph. Now go back in and erase the grid lines. You have created your basic sketch. So now I have, you really can't see it, but I've got a very light grid pattern on top of my eye. So this drawing is 8 inches by 6 inches. I'm roughly going to double the size of that because I like to draw a little bit bigger. So I'm going to make mine 16 inches by 12 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a 16-inch box by a 12-inch box on my paper. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention I am going to be using this sort of triangle here to help me draw my corners. Okay, so now that I've got this grid drawn out, I'm going to very lightly draw in the shapes that are in each of these squares. Starting off over here. One thing when you're doing these drawings, don't don't be afraid to have a light, sort of loose hand, and just, feel free to be loose and sketchy with your line work. You don't need to be too strict at this point. You're just trying to sort of get the basic shapes of everything and line the shapes up into the different squares and the grid pattern that you put down on your paper. So I'm feeling pretty good now about the light drawing here. So I'm going to go through and use my eraser or various erasers, and I'm going to remove the grid line in the drawing here so that it's just the light sketch of the eye that I have left. So now I'm going to switch over to the charcoal pencils that I have. I'm going to start off with the dark. I like to go to get the blacks as dark as they can to sort of match the dark levels that you have in the photograph. And I'm just going to sort of very lightly, in a pattern, just starting to darken up these areas. So I've been using this sharpener with this super soft charcoal pencil, and you can see that within a matter of about, 30 minutes, I've gone from this to this. It's too soft for this. So I switched over to an X-Acto blade, and I'm going to use this instead and just sort of shave everything into here. And you just have to be very soft and very careful because this charcoal is extremely soft and breakable. So I've done a first pass of laying down some of the darks with the charcoal pencils. I am going to now get the blending sticks out, the blending stumps out, and sort of do a first pass of sort of blending it all down and softening it up a little bit. And then I'll go back in again and apply another layer of charcoal on top of it, sort of slowly pull out the detail. So in addition to the blending sticks, I've also started to use some cotton. And this is a sort of a makeup remover, but any sort of cotton ball or tissue or things along that lines. And I've been using it to sort of smooth over things and work on almost sort of like a broader scale than you can do with just the blending stick. And you just grab some fresh pieces every now and again so that they're nice and clean, and you can kind of lightly remove some of the darker tones or some of the other colors in here that you'd like to modify a little bit. highlighted detail. I thought I was going to be able to pull it out with this kneaded eraser, but I think I want something even finer point. So I'm going to use this Tombow eraser with the tiny little point on here, and just go over and pull out a lot of the lighter sort of details in the image. So I've been using this Tombow eraser to pull out some of the highlights, but there's a few areas where I want things a little bit whiter. And so I'm going to try these jelly roll pens. I've never used them before, but I'm going to give them a try and see how they wind up working for me. So I've been working on this for a few hours now, and I feel like I'm getting it to a point where I'm kind of happy with it. I like the drawing, and I like the darks and the light values. And this jelly roll pen wound up coming in handy for a few spots where I wanted to sort of really punch up some of the highlights. I think you have to be careful with its use. You don't want to use it too much, but in a couple of spots, I think it comes in really handy. With any work of art, you can kind of keep going and working and refining it. But really, you kind of get to a point where you're comfortable with it, the way it looks, you like it, and, you can finish. And the most important thing to do is, of course, is to sign your name on it at the end. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had fun following along. I'm going to go ahead and sign this now and wrap this one up.